All right, everybody. Thursday, you completed this payroll, and so now what we're asking you to do is do some editing. So while you're watching this video, hopefully you have the spreadsheet out and you can make these changes. So first thing we're going to do is change the payroll to 14 in bold. We're going to do things again called wrapping text. And so when we wrap the text, we want this text in these columns A through E to be wrapped. So up here where it says wrap text, we want it to wrap. Okay. Now one of the things that might happen is you might have to move your columns a little bit in order for it to wrap. But then again, remember when we talked about the hashtag and not having enough room. So what you might have to do is make your row a little bit bigger, make your column a little bit bigger. So you see if I put it too small, I can see this, but I can't see that. And then you might have to either in your formula bar, you don't have the formula bar, you can view formula bar, but you can do this, you can hit the space bar, you can hit the space bar, or up in here, if you just double click, you can hit the space bar, and when it wraps, it'll go. So for here, we don't need to make this really small, but you just manipulate it a little bit, and you're able to change items and things pretty easily. Now again, if you needed it to be bigger or smaller, if you double click, it'll not format it with the wrapping text. So you can see you need to make sure your row is big enough, make sure you just slowly adjust. If you need to make it so that you can have this area bigger, you just make sure you use the space bar, and that will allow you to keep it going that way. We're going to ask you to write a line, and how do we do that? Multiple cells, we hold down the command key, right align those cells in column A, C, and D, those numbers. We'll leave B alone. Okay? So we've wrapped some text, we've bolded, we've kind of right aligned things. Now we're going to get into formulas. Gross pay. So the Ford employee made $7.89 an hour times 35 hours. We start all the formulas in Excel with equals. And we take hourly rate and we multiply, which is the shift 8, or if you have your 10 key, it's over on the 10 key side of your keyboard. That says multiply and 35. Now in Excel, we don't multiply, we try to stay away from multiplying too many numbers. Rather, we like to use locations. So even though this says C6 times D6, we are telling the computer $7.89 times 35. And you get the number. And again, if you click on it, you still see the number, but up here in the formula bar, you can see the formula. And if you start clicking anywhere, just go ahead and hit escape, and it resets it back to normal. But this formula is saying equals, telling the Excel that it's a formula. C6 saying whatever's in this cell is going to be multiplied by D6, whatever's in this cell. Shift 8, the asterisk is the multiplying. Like anything else, you can copy it down if you want. Okay. Social Security. We start every formula in Excel with equals, and we are now taking gross pay times, and it says 7.65%, which in decimals is 0.0765. So equals tells Excel that it's a formula. Gross pay is E6 times 0.0765, which is 7.65%. And that is your Social Security tax. And again, this is not for real. We are just throwing in numbers from an Excel spreadsheet standpoint. Federal withholding tax, we're going to take gross pay times 20%, which is 0.2. Again, all formulas start with equals. We're taking our gross pay, how much money we made, hourly rate times hours worked, times the tax percentage, which for us, 20% is 0.2. So this is the money we make before deductions or taxes. These are the two taxes we're taking out. Again, there's a lot more complicated things to payroll. We're keeping this very simple. Gross pay is a multiplying hourly rate times hours worked. Social Security tax, 7.65% of gross pay. Federal withholding tax is 20% of gross pay. Now, net pay, we'll start everything with equals, is all the money you actually make after the taxes. So like in the newspaper, they might say you make this much money, but you actually, after taxes, only make this much money. So how will we do this? We'll take gross pay, and there's a couple different things. I'd use the order, and we teach the order of operations. So we would take gross pay, and we would subtract these taxes, but then we would put in parentheses, and with the order of operations, we would tell the computer, if you remember from your elementary school math, it would do everything inside the parentheses first. So we would add the two taxes up, get the number, and subtract it from gross pay. Okay. Now, if you wanted to do that formula differently, an easy way to do it is gross pay minus tax minus tax. You get the same number. This is just a little more correct when you move on into college computers and coding and physics, and you got the order of operations. Can you do it this way? Absolutely. We just kind of always teach this order of operations way. Again, if you start clicking anywhere, just hit escape. Now, usually you can, if you know you're going to copy everything down, you can do one column. That's what's slick about a row. What's slick about Excel. Highlight it, and you're going to be multiplying everything with the fill handle. You can just do one big fill. And there you go. You filled out your spreadsheet. Now with totals, we're going to ask you to change the font to red and bold, which it already is, I guess. We're going to ask you to auto sum down to column E in row 13, your column totals. I already had that bold. You want this to be red and bold as well. We'll put dollar signs on the bottom. Again, if anything changes, I'm going to make sure this still stays wrapped. So if you have to adjust your column width or use the space bar, go ahead. And then the last thing we'll do is we'll type in an average and tab over to hours worked. And we will do an average formula, which is equals an average. And then we will do the range. Now, here's another thing you can do. You can do equals A, click on average, and we want to highlight the average hours worked. So we highlight the numbers there, and we close the percentage or parentheses. And so this formula is telling us equals, tells Excel that it's a formula. The word average is telling us we are going to take the average of the range, which is D6 through D11. And you don't want that to be a money, sorry. You want that to be a number, 34.25 hours worked. That is an average. So when you auto sum, you can see equals sum. See, we didn't type this in. The auto sum button does it for you. Equals tells you it's a formula. Sum means you're adding it up in the range. Well, we can do the same with an average. Equals average and that range. And you have a completed spreadsheet. Hope that worked for you. Have a great weekend.